Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we've got a box office update for this past weekend, which saw the opening weekend of Morbius and the second weekend of The Lost City. So we'll be able to make some projections on The Lost City and also bring a more realistic take and approach to how well or not well Morbius is actually doing at the box office, because I think a lot of people are going to look at the number that it's made here and try and argue that it's doing really, really well. If you compare this to, I think, other films that are, or at least one other film specifically that is definitely comparable to this one, you start to recognize that, okay, it's doing well enough for the amount of money they spent on it, but is it doing well enough as far as it being a popular film that a lot of people are going to see? Not really as much when you go in that direction with it. But before we go any further into this and talking about a couple other films as well, please make sure that you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So as you can see from this headline from Deadline, Morbius shaves teeth to $39 million opening in the Sunday AM update. We'll go ahead and update this just to see if there's been anything added to this. So as you can see here, it says it's playing more like a horror movie. All the fans came out on Thursday and Friday night, with Saturday taking a 25% hit for a now $39.1 million result. The pick's worldwide start stands at around $84 million. So I had a lot of people reaching out to me saying, well, the film made $17 million in its opening day. That's amazing. It's like, not really, especially when you compare this to other films that are a lot, I would say, better of a comparison to this film, especially in the midst of the pandemic narrative and the fear-mongering that is still going on at the, with the box office media and with everything else going on. But as you can see from here, it says this is a glass-half-full scenario right now at the box office. Considering their hardships during the pandemic, exhibition can't be upset with this opening. Not only is it on an exclusive theatrical window from Sony, Morbius' start here is higher than last weekend's The Lost City, and part of April's back-to-back tentpole machine leading to May 6th Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which I'm sure will probably have a decent opening. At the same time, we've seen better from Sony's own handling of Marvel. Look no further. No one was expecting this movie to be Ant-Man in regards to its caliber. It was buzzed all throughout the pandemic by distribution and exhibition sources that Morbius wasn't exactly up to snuff, and clearly the C+ Cinema Score. By the way, this score from Cinema Score, please stop using it. Mainstream media, please stop using Cinema Score. They are not a legitimate corporation. They give you a score based off what they claim, but they provide no actual data to back up said claim. They don't give you how many people they surveyed. They don't give you where they surveyed those people. And so therefore, any score, whether good or bad, really cannot be trusted from them at all. Just wanted to put that out there. It just really grinds my gears. One of the things that still grinds my gears to no end is the treatment of Cinema Score as if it's somehow a legitimate source, when in reality it isn't, because as I said, all they give you is the score. They give you nothing as far as actual data is concerned. But with all that being said, as you all know, I was not a very big fan of the film. I gave the film a D+. I thought that it had a C+ level film up until about the last third of the film, where it kind of just falls off a cliff. And especially when you get into some of the post-credit scenes, you start to realize and recognize, oh, the way that they marketed this film was, in my opinion, almost downright deceitful, is, I think, a very polite way of putting it. And so I would say that this film is lucky to be doing well as it is. And also, I would not be surprised if one of the reasons as to why this film had such a massive drop-off is because, one, people recognized how bad it was and word of mouth spread that it wasn't very good, and two, that when people found out, especially the post-credit scenes, they realized, oh, this is not the film that we were promised, or this is not the film that the trailers made it seem out to be, and so now I no longer have any interest in going to see this movie. And I think that has a very big part to do with it. And so Morbius, as I said, it's doing well enough, especially when you add in those international numbers. It only had a $75 million budget, so it doesn't need to make that much money in order for it to break even. And I would say that it's on pace to do so probably by week 3, week 4 at this point, especially depending on what that week 2 drop-off will be, which I think it might actually be probably bigger than what some might expect it to be, because I don't think the word of mouth on this film is really that good. As for as many bad word of mouths and bad opinions, or rather not bad opinions, but bad reviews of this film that I see maybe one positive opinion, or I see maybe one, hey, at least it's not as bad as this, or at least it's not as bad, which is really, again, kind of a way of trying to split the baby, as it were, and so not really that good of a review in the first place. And so Morbius not doing very well. If anyone's a fan of the film, hey, that is your opinion, and you have every single right to it. And hey, you should know that this film is going to do well enough to break even and make its money back. So if you're hoping for a sequel, hey, if all they're looking at is money and just making money back and making profit, then you're probably in a good position. But if they're looking at this in comparison to other films that are similar as far as genre and feel are concerned, I would say that they probably have a reason to be concerned about this as a franchise, and probably aren't going to be as excited as pushing this as a franchise as maybe some of their other films. And so I'll go ahead and just talk about that film right now. Let's go ahead and compare this to Venom: Let There Be Carnage. That really is, I think, a very fair film to compare it to, because it's come out, again, during the so-called pandemic era. In fact, this was still when, this is before all of the Russia stuff came into the news, right? Everything like that. So people were still being fear-mongered, and yet, what happened? Well, the first Friday, $37.4 million. And so for those people saying, well, 17.3 is really impressive, Venom 2 did it better. And for those saying, well, that's a sequel, and so therefore, Yes, you are correct. However, the first film did overall a lot better than the second film did, as far as the overall box office is concerned. I did point out that the opening to Venom 2 was actually stronger than the original Venom had been. However, it is, I think, worthy of comparison here that Venom 2 had twice as much money and made twice as much money as Morbius has done up to this point, with Morbius ending around $31.1 million by the end of its first weekend, whereas Venom 2 ended around $90 million. So both of these films are around 90-minute to an hour and 45-minute films. They both deal with a darker character within the Sony MCU, right? They're really trying to build up their own MCU with this. This is a character connected to the Spider-Man universe, and they really try in their marketing especially to push that by featuring certain characters a lot, and then you find out, oh, wait a minute, that's actually false marketing in a lot of ways. And I think that they try to use that, and they try to do that to convince people and to basically trick people. And I think people kind of wised up pretty quickly, because as you see, right, it goes from that 17 to 13 to 8. Whereas if you look at Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage, it went to went from 37 to 31 to 20. So even though you might have percentage-wise some similar levels of drops, because of the amount of money being made there by Venom 2, you do have a much bigger discrepancy going on here. And so Morbius, though it is doing well enough, because as I mentioned, it's made around $84 million internationally at this point in time, and it only cost $75 million to make, meaning it only needs about another $100 million worldwide to break even. To say that this film is a massive success or a big success, which, hey, kudos to, and I don't give them kudos very often, but kudos to Deadline for at least being honest by saying that their teeth have been shaved, by saying that it's not doing nearly as well as expected, right? So some of the projections had this film doing anywhere between $40 and $50 million stateside, and it's just barely at this point getting to the $39 million mark. And when they adjust these numbers, it could be lower, it could be higher, because obviously Sunday is still going on. And so basically, if it follows the trends from this weekend, it will end around 31.1. If it ends up bottoming out even more than what they expect, it could actually come in underneath that $39 million. And so just to kind of give it a comparison, again, something where $75 million for this film in Morbius versus the $110 million for Venom: Let There Be Carnage, I think that there are a lot of similarities that one could actually have, not to mention the fact Morbius had more screens, so more accessibility for this overall for this film. And I think that internationally, you're not going to see the same numbers or anywhere close to the same numbers at this point in time, especially when you look at the domestic and compare that to international. $213 million was a domestic box office here, whereas the international box office for Venom 2 was $288.5. I think that you're probably going to see some closeness here. However, I would say this film may be getting to $100 million barely, maybe a little over, maybe 150 max. And this international number probably getting to around that same number. So you could see this film end up over $200 million, somewhere between $200 and $300 million at this point is probably something that I would expect. However, will it be able to actually pull that off and hold that out and get close to and past $300 million? It's going to depend on that week 2 number. As I always say, that week 2 number is going to tell the big story there. But just to kind of temper expectations for anyone that was a fan of the film or was excited for their box office, when compared to a film that I think you can have a lot of similarities to, I would say that this is definitely not a very good showing for Morbius. Doesn't mean it's going to flop, but not a good showing nonetheless. It has made $84 million, as you can see, according to the worldwide box office numbers. So again, another $100 million, and it will break even. We'll break those numbers down when we get to the charting section. So as you see, $39.1 million puts this film at the number 1 spot for this weekend, and also is out at the most theaters at this point in time. I'll go ahead and update this. just in case they've added anything onto it. So The Lost City, in its second weekend of release, even though it only had a 51% drop, so actually a strong hold there with a very low drop percentage for a week 1, week 2 drop-off, adding on 30 screens. In fact, the problem with this film is that its opening weekend was not all that strong in comparison to others. Remember that Deadline had to make up a record saying that this was the strongest ever pandemic-specific comedy led by a female opening. That was the record. It was a female-led comedy that opened during the pandemic. That was the record that it set. So again, really not a record at all whatsoever. And because this film is set to pretty much be exclusively to the States, I think it does have some international releases, but nothing that I think is that's gonna be able to necessarily push this film over the top. This movie is looking at being a financial failure and a financial flop. That is, of course, unless international money is able to start to come in a delayed release in those countries that it is still set to be released in, which, again, that could change the game. But based on the numbers as they currently stand, not a very good look for this film. The Batman came in at the number 3 spot with a $10.8 million. Again, 47% drop, so another strong hold here in the 5th week of its release. So even though it is starting to drop out of theaters, it has pretty much made the amount of money that it is set to make. I suspect, again, law of diminishing returns will probably drop to about $4 or $5 million by next weekend, and so on and so forth. So really, this film will continue just to drop off. It didn't do nearly as well in China, even though it has given millions upon millions of dollars to the Chinese Communist Party over there, as Uncharted has as well. Again, both of them not doing as well in China as they had thought because, of course, of COVID still being over there. Theaters being shut down, and again, just shows you authoritarianism in full force versus, the authoritarianism that we have ourselves in America experienced on a much lower level. And I will say on a much lower level because, hey, at least we weren't being, shut into our homes and having our organs harvested and all other kinds of human rights atrocities. But hey, those human rights atrocities aren't as bad for Sony and Disney to hold their films from being released in that country, whereas if you're Russia, not so much. Again, still going to call them out on that because that is just not okay. Uncharted, though, $3.6 million, 28% drop in its 7th week of release. So again, strong hold there. Spider-Man No Way Home coming in there with the number 5 spot. And the fact that this film's still in the top 5 after 16 weeks of release, 1.4 million, is very impressive. But again, it is getting very close to its physical release. I've already got some pre-orders for this film on 4K. Unfortunately, the Steelbook was already gone, so I kind of missed out on that one. As you know, I'm a Steelbook collector, so very sad to hear that. But I was able to get several 4K pre-orders in, and I'll have some giveaways featured on the channel for, of course, one of my giveaways channel that I have. If you are a member on Patreon, Subscribe Star, etc., on different levels. And also, I'll be able, of course, to actually have the film again to actually watch again, because I really want to see this film again, and my wife hasn't seen it, so I'm actually pretty excited for that to come out in the next week or two. Dog still hanging around with $1.3 million. X from A24. We still don't have a budget for the film. Can't do any math on it if I have no budget. A24. But dropping out massively because it's not doing anything, made another $1 million. So this will probably be out of theaters in the next few weeks, I can imagine. Everything Everywhere All at Once is in limited release right now, only at 38 screens, but this is expected to have a wider opening, so this will be a little bit harder to track as far as projections go, but we, of course, will be able to follow this film once we actually start to get some real numbers coming in as far as how it compares to its budget, if, of course, they have a budget to release there. Sing 2, that little engine that could, as I always like to describe it as, still making $830,000, still at over 2,000 screens, 15 weeks of release. So this, to me, is actually one of the most impressive films of the so-called pandemic era. And it's especially true when you look at how the amount of money it's made since its first 2 weeks of release compares to its total run. Again, it's actually much more impressive than one might think. So going into the number totals, $84 million, as I mentioned, for Morbius. Again, I've mentioned everything that I really can about that. $54.5 million total for The Lost City. Unless an international savior is able to come out of nowhere to save this film, it's expected to have at least $50+ million in financial losses. Whereas The Batman having right now $710.5 million internationally, probably at the point where it's slowing down enough where the film probably won't get Probably won't hit too many more milestones. I could see this film probably ending up close to around maybe $800 million, max $850. I don't see it going north of that at this point in time, just because of the law of diminishing returns. And I know that some people have pointed out previously, like, oh, well, these numbers don't match other numbers from other websites. Just remember that whether it's the numbers, whether it's Box Office Mojo, both of those sites fall behind in different areas. And so I go with the numbers because they tend to be the most consistent as far as the timing that their numbers are released, especially when their international numbers are updated, whereas Box Office Mojo tends to be further behind. And so this is the best way and best time for me to be able to cover this stuff because it's during Baby Thor's nap time, and therefore the numbers are what they are. So if you're saying, well, it's different now, or hey, it's different on this site, I recognize that these numbers will change and I will update my charting as such. However, even if this added another 20, 30 million, because that's the max that it would be as far as a differential at this point, from another site, likely, that still would put me in the same position as, again, max $850 million by the end of its run. Probably less than $800 million, but I could see it hitting $800 million by the end of its run as well. And as you can see, right now it's at 2.6, it is 3.6 times its production budget. So again, profit at this point. And again, every single weekend adding on more and more to that profit. What is interesting about this film, more so than anything else, though, is, of course, the fact that it was expected to make some money internationally and really hasn't done much in China. Again, it's actually made a total of $19 million in China, which is a lot less than what they had expected. But keep in mind, 75% of this money, so millions of dollars from this movie, going to support the Chinese Communist Party, and that is an evil, and it needs to be called out as such. Uncharted at $363 million also is pretty much capped out at this point in time. I could see it maybe getting to $400 million max, but this film has pretty much seen all that it's going to see. Spider-Man No Way Home at $1.89 billion. I still think it has $1.9 billion in the tank. I think Sony might try and do even a final push before it's a theatrical or before its home video release, before its DVD, Blu-ray, 4K release, and maybe try and get people to go see it again, maybe even keep it in theaters while its physical release is out. But I really do think $1.9 billion is still in the cards for this film. And it's, again, so very close to being able to do that. So I did think that they would be by this weekend, so I was wrong in that instance. But it looks like the international numbers kind of dropped out like a light, as it were. Especially, this makes sense because the digital version of the film has since become available. And that, of course, is going to impact it because now people can just pay a certain amount of money, similar probably to the ticket prices, depending on where you live. And you actually own the film digitally at the very least. And you all know I'm very much against that because physical media is the way to go because you actually get to own that media. Whereas if it's digital copy, they can take that away technically at any point. They can change it, they can edit it, etc. And so physical media will always be the way to go there. Dog, $69.3 million. So again, it's pretty much capped out as far as money is concerned, but it's still making some money. X, $10.7 million. Not really doing much of anything, but no budget, so I can't say much of anything about it. And yeah, every single week, this movie continues to be in the discussion. Sing 2, it will definitely be crossing $400 million by the end of its run. And the question really is, how much longer are they going to keep this film in theaters? And, how much more money can they really make from this film? Again, doing very impressively there. All right, let's go ahead and look at some charts. We like charts, right? We like looking at some charts here. So at $84 million right now, Morbius is looking at being right now $62.1 million in the red, or in the hole, as they say. But as I mentioned, because of the $75 million budget that was being projected and being talked about, it means the actual total cost with marketing is around $112.5. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, now, this movie's been delayed several times. Doesn't that mean the budget probably is higher and the marketing cost probably higher than the average? Yes. However, we don't have those numbers, and I'm not going to pretend like I can just come up with said numbers. And so therefore, the break-even point is still going to be 2.5 times the production budget that's being reported, which would put it at $187.5 million, which means that this film, as I said before, is pretty much guaranteed to make its money back. Starting off, again, a little under $100 million in its opening weekend. Law of diminishing returns, different openings. I think that it's going to get there. The question is, of course, how much higher than the break-even point is it going to be? Depending on that week 2 drop-off, it could be as low as maybe $200 million, and it could be as high as maybe $350. I don't see this film getting over $350 million internationally by the end of its run. I just don't really see the excitement level being really there for this film. Similar sentiments can be said about The Lost City, even though I've heard a lot of people say some good things about the film. Not seen it myself, so I can't really say. But I do know that the media has tried to run with this as, again, the female-led comedy, the female-led film that everyone's been waiting for. Except no one really is. So this film is expected to make somewhere between $77 and $109 million in the totality of its release. However, as I said, no international numbers at this point in time, so this could easily change. It could end up doing a lot better than this if it does much better internationally than is typically expected of a film that's made this much money by this point in its run. Based on these numbers, though, that means that we can expect the film to lose somewhere between $64 and $45 million, meaning likely around a $50 million loss for the actual film, which stands right now at $78.2 million in net losses. Still no numbers for The Outfit or X or Jujutsu Kaisen because we don't have those budgets. So once we have those budgets, if anyone can find those budgets that's being reported by a reputable source, please, maybe, email me and point me in a direction so that way I can actually get that information out there, because I would love to do some math crunching on that. With the Batman, as you can see, $710.5 million, even though it's not doing as well as I and many others had expected it to do. Still $126 million in net gain profit. I think that they should definitely be happy with that. Warner Brothers has not seen this kind of profit in a very, very long time for their films, and so I'm sure that they are quite happy. Cyrano's pretty much dropped off the map, and so we can pretty much guarantee that film ended up losing money. Uncharted at $37.8 million in net gain profit. Not looking like it's going to be a huge, massive success, but hey, for a film to be able to reach its break even and make some profit, especially when the film like that costs around $180 million, hey, they're going to be happy just with the fact that they get to make a little bit of money. It does, I think, raise some questions, though, about whether or not there's a franchise really in that, because this is the type of film that you would expect to be somewhere closer to this number here if you're actually expecting franchise-level numbers. And since it's not even getting to this point or even getting close to what Sing 2 is doing in net gain profit, I would say that Uncharted's future is, one could say, uncharted. You're welcome for that. A Dog is at $19.1 million in net gain profit, again doing better than expectations, more than doubling its first 2 weeks of release. I imagine that a dog being in the film definitely helped with that. I've got 2 sleeping puppies in here that remind me of why that is the case. Death on the Nile indeed suffered a death. Really not much else being reported from that film, so $56 million still in the red, even though it did better than some expectations, right? So getting around 60%, which is about the average of what films do compared to the first 2 weeks, still because of its much larger budget compared to previous films and other films really that are, I guess, in a similar market or a similar audience factor. Not really all that there. Much to be said for there. Moonfall, I've been getting some notifications about a release of this on digital and physical media, etc. Not going to be enough to save it. $200 million in the red for this film. And talking and capping things off with Spider-Man No Way Home with $1.89 billion. The film is at $834 million in net gain profit. 75% of that goes to Sony. 25% of that goes to Disney. So even though Disney is getting some pretty good money, pretty good return on their investments there, 56% compared to its first 2 weeks means that this film has almost doubled, or one could say, a little less than doubled its money since the first 2 weeks. So had very strong holds from week on to week on. It's continuing to make money, continuing to be in the top 5 box office, even after about 16 weeks. And I imagine that could even continue, especially if Morbius ends up being a massive failure and having a massive drop next week. And also depending on the films that we have coming out. We do have some films set to come out in the next few weeks, obviously. We can talk about Doctor Strange coming out in the very beginning of May. We can also talk about Father Stu set to come out next weekend, or I think it's next weekend for that film. Fantastic Beasts set to come out in the next few weeks. Also, The Northman, as I mentioned before, The Northman's massive budget could actually be a pretty bad sign. Let's go ahead and get some actual officials here. So Morbius, as you can see, just not really doing all that much. I actually even forgot about a bigger one. So yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 comes out next weekend. Yes, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 comes out next weekend. Yes, so this film's going to destroy Morbius. I could see, even though I'm not all that excited for Sonic 2, I think that especially the fans who just are still so enamored with Jeff Fowler for actually listening to them about the original design of the character after the first Sonic debacle, I can totally see this film doing much, much better much, much better than what we saw from Morbius. And I think that this is going to definitely take a lot of people away from Morbius. And I can see Morbius, I think, is going to have a much steeper drop off than maybe I even expected. But we'll have to wait for those numbers. We have to definitely wait for those numbers. Fatherless 2 comes out the weekend after that. Then you have Fantastic Beasts. So again, it's the reason why Morbius, I think, is definitely going to be limited in how much money it can actually make. The Northman is then expected to come out April 22nd. And then from there, you've got May 6th, which is Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness, which I'm sure will do pretty well. The question, of course, will be, how well will it do? This will be the first MCU film that we've had in quite a while, the first real MCU film that we've had in a while that's specifically from Walt Disney and not a Sony collaboration. And so the question will be, will this film be able to do anywhere near the numbers of even just the previous Doctor Strange film or anywhere close to those Spider-Man numbers? Doubt it highly as far as the Spider-Man numbers are concerned, but we'll have to wait and see how much hype they can build up for that film. So what are y'all's thoughts, though, about any of these things? Do you think Morbius is going to be a huge success, especially when it's going up against Sonic next weekend? I think Sonic is just going to, again, take things over pretty easily next weekend. But let me know your thoughts about this and anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, that fire button on Odyssey. Y'all are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my April Patreon, Subscribe Star, and Locals members. Starting off with Patreon with Animation Commentator, Brandon, let's go Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Father Christopher Miller, Hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Harold Francis, Hymir Ari Hymeson, Inflamed Wood, Jacob from Holland, Jeff Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyle 79, Laura, The Modern Major General Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Priscilla Hall, Rosella Allen, Stan Andrian, Miss Martin Muses, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and Tina B., the Empress of the Universe. Thank you very much for supporting me over on Patreon. And also to my Subscribe Star peeps, Matt317, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stand 4, John B., Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alice McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. And also a huge shout out to my Locals members, starting off with Kara Tharp, K Tharp 56. Also, UAB, Mad Dog, Mike Jackson, Robert Barnes, and also a huge support as well to Brett D90. Thank you very much for supporting me over on Locals. Thank you again to everyone for supporting the channel. Please, if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, go ahead and check out the top link at the video description. It is my Willow link, as I like to describe it, and it brings you to a link tree where you get access to all of these different locations, as well as all of the various social media platforms that you can follow me on. If you join at the Citizen of Asgard level, you get your name shouted out at the end of every single live stream and video. Army of Asgard level gets you that, plus you get access to a giveaways channel that I have on Discord. If you ever don't have access to that giveaways channel, please contact me. I do send out the link to the Discord and with the instructions on it at the beginning of every single month. But if you don't have access to that giveaways channel where I'm giving away 4Ks and Blu-rays and all that kind of stuff, as much as I possibly can give away is available there. Please just reach out to me and I will gladly walk you through the process to make sure you get access to that giveaways channel. And again, that is, Army of Asgard level, whether you be on Patreon, Subscribe Star, or on Locals. Also, if you are the Keeper of the Bifrost level, you get access to all of that. Plus, you get access to a podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger. We try and do it once or twice a month. I think we're going to try and do it twice this month to make up for some miscommunication that we had last month. So be on the lookout for that, and look out for those podcast Q&A posts that are always available on the Patreon main page, the Subscribe Star main page, on the YouTube side of things as well. The YouTube community tab, you'll always find the podcast Q&A there, and also on the Locals page as well. And if you join at the Chosen of Valhalla level, the highest of the levels, you get access to all of that. Plus, if it's your first month, you get a free t-shirt, any t-shirt you want from my Teespring, my TeePublic, whichever one you want to get it from. You just let me know the size, location I'm sending it to, color, that kind of stuff. You get it sent to you. Plus, you get to be featured once a month on the Chosen of Valhalla live stream, where we all come together and just talk about movies and really anything the Chosen want to talk about, and it is a lot of fun. Anyway, thank you all very much for your love and for your support. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.